And continuing on, we are now in week 14, the wrap up of week 14. A lot of games that really kind of made an impact in this playoff run. So we'll get started with week 14. The Chicago Bears defeat the Seattle Seahawks 35-14. Jason Campbell, 3 passing touchdowns, 147 yards on the ground for Mark Ingram with a touchdown. Corey Sheets, the third string running back, getting a touchdown this year. And we see Manning with 78 yards, an interception. At the very end, when they were getting blown out, we had Matt Flynn go in the game. He threw like a 77-yard pass, then like a 3-yard pass. I don't think he's going to take Manning's job, but just gave him some time. But he did throw in 5 attempts, more than Eli Manning did this entire game. So that's tough. Lynch only getting 55 and Ringer getting 39. So Seattle on a losing streak here, and the Chicago Bears getting a win they need to try to stay atop the NFC North. Then we had 2 7-5 teams, the Packers and the Steelers, both wanting to win in order to stay competitive in their division. Pittsburgh wanted this win to tie the Cleveland Browns for the division, and the Green Bay Packers wanted this win to stay in neck and neck with the Bears at the top of the NFC North. Clearly, the Packers did their job. Stafford didn't have a great game, but a good enough game to get the win. This is the first game that the Packers had to deal with LeSean McCoy out for the remainder of the season. So James Starks had 105 yards rushing with 1 TD, and rookie Ronnie Hillman had 65 yards rushing. So great running game for the Green Bay Packers with their backup running backs taking charge. Even you can see Ronnie Hillman with a 60-yard TD pass. Great play there for them. Then we have Maurice Jones-Drew getting 89 yards, but nothing really spectacular. So Pittsburgh, that's a crucial loss this season. They needed that to just surpass the Browns. This was a tight game. Colt McCoy has been playing very well as the starting quarterback for the Jaguars. He had 197 yards in the TD, kept protected the ball very well. But in the end, it was a last drive that the Colts were able to come through with. You see Brady Quinn also not making mistakes. 3 passing touchdowns. Great game for him. I mean, there was that one fumble that Chris Johnson had in the game that gave the Jaguars the lead, because then they went down and scored. We see that Steve Smith is having a fantastic year with these Jaguars. Let's see if I look at his, can I see his stats? Yeah, I don't love the white, but he's closing in on 1,000 yards receiving, and this is a guy that I did not expect that. 9 TDs on the year. He'll probably get over 10. So Steve Smith, 27 years old, is having a breakout year for the Jags. Good for him. Good guy. I'm very happy for him. Then we have Buffalo, who's 4-9, going up again. Well, 4-8 at the time. Excuse me, it was 3-9 at the time. Been on a losing streak, but come away with a shocking defeat over the Jets, who were 7-5, trying to keep getting deeper into a solidified wild card seed. But Christian Ponder, 234 yards and 3 TDs. Kareem had 74 yards rushing. Then you have Alex Smith, shy of 200 yards, a TD and an interception. Portis only with 42 yards. Not a great game for the Jets. They really wanted this one. Bills have really nothing to gain other than just sticking it to their division rival. And now we have the Cowboys on a 3-game winning streak with Russell Wilson coming back in the lineup after benching Joe Webb. RG3 was also on a solid trajectory with the Vikings, getting them back into the playoff hunt, tying with the NFC North. But now the Vikings fall a game behind the Packers and the Bears for their division. Wilson, you see 177 yards passing and an interception. But Adrian Peterson with 165 yards and 3 TDs. Peterson really carrying this Cowboys team, which he needed to do, and he's been doing. You can see the Doug Martin and Pierre Thomas duo only getting 38 yards combined. RG3 rushing more than both of them. Not a good sign there, so there's some work to do in Minnesota. Then you have the 4-8 Bengals and the 4-8 Chiefs going up against each other. This was just a let's get this game over with kind of game. Marino with 119 yards, good display there, good TD. Croyle with 106 yards, 1 TD, 2 interceptions was just enough to get them to win the game. Whedon's 233 yards, but 3 turnovers was the difference there. Challenging with those turnovers. And then you got Trent Richardson with 80 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Richardson had a decent year. We see Rudolph Getting some progress here. Let's see. He got, what, 86 yards, 40, nothing, a few games of nothing. But this season, he's got about 225 yards. Yikes, that's lower than I thought it would be. That doesn't make any sense. Has he not had a touchdown this year? Oh my, he has not had a touchdown this year. Ouch, rough year for Kyle Rudolph there. I mean, he only had 2 last year in his rookie year, but man, I got to think about that. I mean, he's just not getting touchdowns apparently. Anyway, so that was an interesting revelation. Kyle Rudolph having a really bad sophomore year with Brandon Whedon at quarterback. But then we had the Browns versus the Ravens. We had the 3-9 Ravens going up against the 8-4 Browns. Browns trying to get more of a gap between them and Pittsburgh, but Pryor here throws 4 interceptions. So that was not great to see. Rough game for him. I mean, he only ran for 24 yards, only with that 1 attempt. Normally, Pryor gets a lot more. But Kaepernick didn't have a great game either. 72 yards and 1 interception. It was Ray Rice, the 134 yards by him, that really carried the Ravens. It was more of a defensive matchup, as you can tell. I mean, not great stats for either team, other than that rushing display by Ray Rice. So Cleveland is still just 1 game ahead of Pittsburgh. So Baltimore just doing damage for their in their division to make the Cleveland Browns have a tougher time at clinching the division. Then we've got the Cardinals and the Lions now with the same record after Detroit wins. We see 3 touchdowns and 204 yards for Tannehill. Reggie Bush getting 80 yards, and Reggie Bush, I mean, had a 6-yard reception there, but Bush is definitely the guy. I mean, when he's in the game, the Lions have a chance. He's been injured for a lot of this season, and so now he's back, and we see the Lions being a bit more challenging to other teams. Andy Dalton with 2 touchdowns and interception. You can see no real running support there. An interesting display there, because I think the Cardinals are going to have to really think about whether they care to bring someone like Andy Dalton back, because he's probably going to play out his rookie year here. And what are his yards? Not bad yards. I mean, 23 to 20 TDs, interceptions, 18 sacks. So he's not having that great of a protection year. So we'll have to see if he's the future in Arizona or just the cheap QB option for his rookie contract. Then you got the Saints, who surprised the Panthers. Had the Panthers won, they would have stayed ahead of the Falcons, who were on a bye this week. But we see Flacco with 248 yards, 2 TDs, and interception. Booker only with 55 yards and a TD. T.Y. Hilton getting over 100 with Torrey Smith coming through with 91. But Tebow is 4 passing touchdowns. Very great display by the Saints. And then 283 yards. Tomlinson back from injury. He gets 89 yards in the victory, so good for him to come back. Antonio Bryant with 100 yards receiving. So this was just a pride game for the Saints, and they were able to beat their division opponent. Then by a field goal, we see the 49ers defeating Andrew Luck's Rams. The 2-1 touchdown interception ratio for Luck was not good enough to cut it. The 35 yards from Hightower were not enough to cut it. But we see Drew Brees with only 143 yards, Foster with 104, and a rushing touchdown. I mean, this is a lower scoring game, but one that the 49ers were able to edge out. And then we have the San Diego Chargers versus the Patriots. A big game here, because I actually had the Chargers won. There's a good chance that they could have made a real run for the first place in the AFC. But Rodgers was slow to get things going. Brady didn't have a great game, 215 yards, which is a solid game, I guess you could say, but not one that it's not like a standard Brady game. Jamal Charles did get injured, I think, for maybe 6 weeks, 5 weeks. So Stephen Ridley and Tony Hunt came in, so 64 and 32 for them, and then 3 touchdowns total among those 2 backup running backs. Barber with 72 yards. Wells coming back off of the injury with only 17 yards. So we have Barber still being one of the main backs, and I might use Barber moving forward just because he's been playing very well. Then you got the Denver Broncos defeating the Oakland Raiders, and boy, this was not the season the Raiders wanted. We'll see if Hugh Jackson is truly on the hot seat or not. But we have Matt Ryan with 186 yards, and Bradford throwing for less than that with 121, but still getting the win. It was Ahmad Bradshaw with 155 yards and a TD, and then fullback Brian Leonard getting a TD as well. We see Sean Green and Shane Vereen only amounting for 73 yards. Nothing to compare to. Then we have a battle of the NFC East, two 6-6 teams, and here it was, the Commanders commanding the game. 4 passing touchdowns for Michael Vick, 132 yards rushing for Goodson, 61 yards for Vick. Great game for the Washington Commanders, whereas the New York Giants fumble, even though they had 237 yards from Palmer, the 2 interceptions hurt. Ryan Matthews with 2 rushing TDs and 67 yards, also not enough. So some more work needed to be done for the Giants, who were kind of trying to vie for that playoff spot, but that loss is big for them and their chances. And then on Monday Night Football, the Miami Dolphins just put on a display, 42 points over 24 points. Both quarterbacks had over 300 yards, but it was 2 touchdowns and 1 interception to 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Cam Newton took care of the ball, perfect passer rating, dominant performance. As you can see, Joe McKnight with 107 yards rushing, Ryan Williams with 48 yards rushing, whereas the Tennessee Titans failed. Well, I guess they did break over 100 yards together, but that was Freeman and Stewart. Greg Jennings outperforming Calvin Johnson Jr. in this game with 202 yards and a touchdown. However, the real superstar of this game was Jordy Nelson, who was just breaking tackles left and right. I mean, he had those only 3 receptions, but the 2 touchdowns he was breaking tackles and slipping through the defense. So really, we see Newton spreading the ball around to his receivers, Fred Davis, Johnson, Jenkins, Nelson, even McKnight, the running back, getting 46 yards, all spreading the ball around, where we see the Titans was just cheesing it with Greg Jennings, who is also one of the best receivers in the league. So look at the standings. We've got the Patriots, who are still atop the East, but now the Miami Dolphins and the Jets are tied. So we'll see if Miami, on a 2-game win streak, can put themselves back in contention for the playoffs. They are the defending AFC champions, so we'll see if they can make a true run at it again. Browns are only holding on to their division by 1 game, but both them and the Steelers are on a 2-game losing streak, so that's not great for either of them. Browns were like 6-0. They were really in control of the league, and now they are falling significantly behind. We have the Texans and the Colts tied at 8-5 now. Either one of them can take the third seed, so Cleveland could be pushed back to the 4th seed if they aren't able to turn their season around. I mean, their season isn't bad, but just to turn them back into the contenders they were looking like in those first few weeks. But then you have the Chargers in the West, 9-4. Denver now making a run at the playoffs. We'll see if they're able to fit themselves in as a 7th, maybe 6th seed. Kansas City Chiefs and Raiders not anywhere near. Yes, Jacksonville is right now the number 1 overall pick, so we will see if any team loses a lot coming in these last few stretches, or if Jacksonville will be the worst team. Even though Colt McCoy is playing better than Nick Foles, and so there is some hope with Jacksonville. Maybe they don't have to take a quarterback like Geno Smith with the number 1 overall pick. We can see if maybe they go for Geno or Emmanuel or someone else in the later rounds. Or if they decide to stick with Nick Foles and see if he can develop. But as for the NFC, yes, the Buccaneers are still ahead with 10-3 record. Falcons go past the Panthers. I think it's because of their division. They're a half game ahead of their division rival, the Panthers. But right behind them are the Philadelphia Eagles, 9-4, and the 49ers, 9-4. Both in control of their division by 2 and 3 games. 2 games ahead of the Commanders and 3 games ahead of the Rams. We see with the NFC East, the Cowboys are on a 3-game win streak, and we'll see if they're able to make a late run here. I mean, I predict 7-10 because that's what they've been the past 5 years in a row. I think they might have a chance at it because they have Peterson and Wilson working very well right now, but it's probably a little bit too late. The North has been interesting these past few weeks. You see these teams very close together. Packers on a 4-game win streak, Bears on a 2-game win streak, both 8-5. And then the Vikings falling short this week just by half a game. But if we look at the league, we got Seattle, who was supposed to be a contender with Eli Manning and Marshawn Lynch, just not doing it. Oakland also now at 3rd. And then the Chiefs gave up their first-round pick for Whedon, and so that's going to the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons are going to get possibly a top 5 pick because of that Whedon deal. Looking at rankings real quick, we got the Patriots at number 1 again. And then they're number 1 offense. Houston coming in at number 1 defense. Interesting. If we scroll down to the worst teams, we got Oakland, worst offense. We've got the Saints, worst defense. All kind of makes sense there. And then we've got the stat leaders. So Newton having a big game, now 3rd with 3,300 yards. Also taking care of the ball really well. We see Brady and Newton with only 5 interceptions. Probably some of the best in the league. We see Michael Vick with under 10. Ponder under 10. Quinn, Jackson, all doing pretty well, not giving away the ball. Big Ben, top 5 as well. We look at touchdowns. We see Brady, Newton, Manning, McNabb all at the top. Rushing, we've got McFadden, who I'm thinking might have a chance at 2,000 yards. We'll see if he can get 100 these last 4 weeks. Portis, Adrian Peterson, Ryan Matthews shooting up there. Now he's at 1,200 yards. And Chris Johnson, all top 5. Johnson just running away with it with touchdowns. Receiving, Greg Jennings outperformed Johnson, so he has that 70-some yards more than Calvin Johnson Jr. However, and then we see A.J. Green making the top 5, Julio, Emmanuel Sanders. But then touchdowns, Calvin Johnson runs away with it. Josh Gordon doing well. I mean, he had the bye week, so he had a week of nothing, but he is likely to cross over 1,000 yards. Tackles, we see Palomalu, rookie Kendricks. I mean, that's interesting. He's been pretty good, Michael Kendricks. Sack leaders, we have Atkins still at the top. You can see the top 5 there. Watt now at number 6. We have interceptions with Antrell Roll, Crescent Butler. I mean, no real changes, I think, here. Not as many. I mean, I know Hayden started getting a few. He had that 1 interception, big game this past week. Kicking, I don't think anyone cares. So there you have it. We've got 4 more weeks left, 15, 16, 17, and week 18. We're trying to get through these a little bit quicker because basically what I'll do at this point is if you're a team that's not in the playoffs, it's always on accelerated clock. You just get the game over with. And then I use more accelerated clock with other teams just to get these games because most of them are pretty much set. I mean, it's going to be very hard for anyone to, for the Dolphins or the Jets to take on the Patriots. But right now, the playoff picture isn't too kind to them. I mean, the AFC East only has 1 team going there. The Broncos are now in the picture, and Steelers are now in the picture. And Colts have solidified themselves as the 5th seed there by a game. Whereas the NFC, we see the Falcons now at the 6th seed, Commanders at 7 and 6. So very interesting shakeup here. But thanks for watching this video. If you like, please like and subscribe. We'll have more of these videos coming up. I mean, this is year 11, so really exciting to see how this league has totally transformed over the years and over each week.